Okay, in this video we're going to go from line 780 up to the end of book 2. So we can start with this phrase, longa exilia, in line 780. That means long exiles. And then there's actually no main verb here. And then what goes with longa exilia is tibi, which means to or for you. It's the dative of to. So it's a slightly strange phrase, long exiles for you. It's quite compressed Latin. In English, we'd probably expand it a bit and say long exiles are in store for you, something like that. And then we have et, meaning and then the next subject is a vastum aequor, vastum being an adjective, meaning vast or huge, and then aequor is any kind of big flat surface, basically. It can be a plain of land, it can be the sea. But then here you've also got maris in the genitive, meaning of sea. So aequor maris, I would perhaps translate as stretch of sea. So a vast stretch of sea. And then you have this gerundive, arandum. You can tell it's a gerundive from the nd in the middle. And remember, we translate a gerundive as needing to be somethinged. Needing to be somethinged. So in this instance, arandum, needing to be ploughed. Now, of course, you don't literally plough the sea. So ploughing here is being used as a metaphor for travelling, basically, travelling across the sea. So just to go through that line again, long exiles are in store for you, and a vast stretch of sea to be ploughed. Okay, then we can go to et, meaning and venies, meaning you will come, future tense of venio. And then we imagine the word ad, because we've got a accusative phrase here, terram hesperiam. So you will come to the terram, the land of Hesperiam, Hesperia. So, and you will come to the land Hesperia, ubi, where. And then you've got the adjective Lydius, meaning Lydian, and that is agreeing with Thibris in the next line, which is the Tiber, the river Tiber. So where the Lydian Tiber, and then I might go to inter plus accusative, meaning between, and then you've got another adjective-noun combination in the accusative. The adjective is opima, and the noun is arwa. So opima meaning meaning rich or fertile, and then arwa being fields. So between the rich fields, and then virum here could be accusative singular, but I think in this context is genitive plural. It's a shortened version of virorum. So the rich fields of men. And then the main verb is fluit, right? So the subject is the Lydian Tiber, and then the verb is fluit, flows. And then you've got an ablative phrase, leni agmine. Leni meaning sort of gentle, and then agmen in this context, I think not a battle line, more like a procession or a march. So flows with gentle march. So I'll just go from et in line 781 up to the end of the sentence. And you will come to the land Hesperia, where the Lydian Tiber, between the rich fields of men, flows with gentle march. Okay, then we can go on to line 783. We can go to illic, which means there, in that place. And the subject is res laetae. Laetae is happy. Res just means things, situations, whatever. And then you've got que, meaning and then regnum means rule or kingship or kingdom. And then you've got et, meaning and then regia conjunx. Regia is an adjective that means royal, and then conjunx is a wife. And we know it's a wife rather than a husband because the adjective regia has a feminine ending. If it was a royal husband, it would be regius conjunx. And this woman, Lavinia, she's royal in the sense that she's the daughter of a local king in Italy. Okay, and now we've got all these subjects, the res, the regnum, the conjuncts. Where's our verb? Well, the verb is parta, which is perfect passive. It's a shortened version of parta est, right? Has been won. And then you have tibi, dative case, for you. Has been won for you. And then she says that there's an imperative after the semicolon, pelle, which means drive away. And the object is lacrimas, accusative plural, drive away your tears. For, and then you've got PPP, delecti, which means beloved. And then that's agreeing with creusai, so beloved creusa. Now, grammatically, this is genitive case, but in English, we probably wouldn't say tears of beloved creusa. We would say tears for beloved creusa, because these are the tears that Aeneas is crying because of his sadness about Creusa's death. Okay, I'll just go over those two lines again from Illic. So there, happy things and kingship and a royal wife is won for you. Drive away tears for beloved Creusa. Okay, and then she's now, in the next sentence, she's going to explain why Aeneas shouldn't be crying for her. She says, ego, I, non means not, and then the main verb is aspiciam in the next line, which is future tense. Remember that there's two sets of future endings in Latin. You've got the ones for first and second conjugation, bo bis bit, bimus bitis bunt, and then the ones for the third, fourth, and mixed conjugations, am, ace, et, amus, atis, ent. And it's that one that you've got here, aspiciam. So, I shall not look at, and then the object is an adjective and noun combination. The adjective is superbas, meaning proud or arrogant. The noun is sedes, which are homes. So I shall not look at the proud homes. And then you've got myrmidonum, genitive plural, of the myrmidons. Or, that's the we, the ve or ue at the end of dolopum, or dolopians. So dolopum is another genitive plural like myrmidonum. So let's go on to the comma at the end of 786. So she says, or, out, ebo, I will go, so nor will I go. And then you've got servitum. Servitum is a form called a supine, and it expresses a kind of purpose, right? So in other words, I'm not going to go to be a slave. And this verb servitum is followed by the dative case, and the dative is grais matribus. Grais meaning Greek, and matribus meaning mothers. Okay, so just to go through those two lines from known, I shall not look at the proud homes of the Myrmidons or Dolopians, or go to be a slave for Greek mothers. So she's saying, yes, it's very sad that I've died, but it could be worse, because it would actually be even worse than death to go back to Greece, be carried off to Greece as a slave, basically. So she's saying, look on the bright side. At least I haven't been enslaved at the end of the war. Okay, and then there's an interesting line here. She says, Dardanis, a Dardan, right, a Trojan, in other words. So Dardanis is a kind of feminine form. So I, a Dardan, and et, a Nurus, a daughter-in-law, of, and then you have a genitive phrase, dy Veneris. Dy meaning divine, Veneris meaning Venus. So a Dardan and daughter-in-law of divine Venus. Now, just to explain this very briefly, in what sense is Creusa a daughter-in-law of Venus? Well, she's married to Aeneas, and Aeneas is the son of the goddess Venus. So that's how it works. That's why she's the daughter-in-law of Venus. Now, what has that, and the fact that she's a Trojan, what has that got to do with her point here? I think she's basically saying, you know, it would be bad enough for anybody to be a slave to the Greeks, but she's saying it would be even worse for a Trojan, right? We're a great, proud people, us Trojans. So for a Trojan to be a slave would be terrible. And especially for the daughter-in-law of a goddess to be a slave, that would be a true humiliation. So therefore, she's saying, look on the bright side, you know, it's much better for me as a proud Trojan and daughter-in-law of a goddess to die quickly at the end of the war rather than be carried off to Greece as a slave. She's avoided a terrible humiliation and perhaps terrible suffering as well. Right, and you can see this line is a bit shorter than the others. This is another half line in the sense that it's incomplete. We then go on to the word said, meaning but. And then we have, this is a very strange line. She says, and then the subject is Magna Genetrix, the great mother. So Genetrix is a poetic version of Mater, in the same way that Genitor, father, is a poetic version of Pater. So the great mother, and then Deum is genitive plural, of the gods, like Deorum. So, but the great mother of the gods, detinet, holds back or detains, and the object is me, accusative case, on, and we have to imagine the word in here, in plus ablative, and the ablative is his oris, on these shores. Okay, so just to go through that again, but the great mother of the gods detains me on these shores. The great mother of the gods is a reference to the goddess Cybele, who is a kind of a goddess from the area around Troy, who was kind of imported into Rome later. And Virgil doesn't explain this. We're not told why Cybele in particular has decided that Creusa has to die here. Before, she was saying it was Jupiter who was, you know, who had said that she had to stay here and couldn't go with Aeneas onwards to Italy. So quite a mysterious line. We don't really know what Virgil's going for here particularly. Although there are a few more things to say about that, which we'll deal with in class. So the last line then of her speech, she says, Yamque, and now, vale, farewell, goodbye. And then there's an imperative, serva, which means sort of guard or preserve, and the object of that is amorem, your love. And then we have a genitive phrase, communis nati. Communis means shared, as in commune, communism, communal, etc. And then nati, which we've met a few times, is a son, right? Natus means a son, just like filius. In Latin, the genitive is used here, your love of our son. You might decide in English to translate that as for, you know, guard your love for our shared son. Your choice. I mean, what does she really mean by this? Guard your love of our shared son. She's basically saying, look, I'm dead. I'm moving on to the afterlife, whatever. You need to look after our son. You know, make sure that you continue loving our son. She might be particularly worried about this because she knows that Aeneas is going to remarry, right? Since she's dead, she's been granted some kind of foresight into the future. So, and she has foreseen if we go back a few lines, she has foreseen the regia conjunx, the royal wife that Aeneas will have in the future. So she might be worried here that Aeneas will be so excited about his new marriage and maybe new children that he will forget his old, you know, his son by his former and dead wife, Creusa. So she's saying, you know, don't just forget about me and our son, you know, continue to love our son. Okay, and that's the end of her speech. And then we go to ubi in the next line, which means when. And the verb is dedit, so when she gave, literally. I would probably say when she said, or when she had said, because the object is haec dicta, meaning these words. Dicta, just like verba. When she had said these words. And then the main verb is dei seruit, and I assume here the subject is she, i.e. Creusa. She left me. And the object, me, is not stated, but we do have two accusative words here. One is lacrimantem, and the other is volentem. And you can tell they're both present participles from the nt in the middle. So she left me weeping, lacrimantem, and wanting, volentem. And this will be followed by an infinitive, wanting to dicere, to say. And the object of dicere is multa, accusative plural. Many things, right? There's no neuter plural noun to agree with multa, so we just translate it as many things. So she left me weeping and wanting to say many things. Just quickly, by the way, these present participles are accusative, right? You can see that from the em at the end, and that tells us that they're not referring to Creusa, right? It's not that Creusa is leaving while she's crying and she wants to say other things. No, these go with the object. So Creusa leaves Aeneas, and Aeneas is the one crying, and Aeneas is the one wanting to say many things. Okay. And quae recessit, she withdrew, in plus accusative, in tenuis auras. Now, tenuis means sort of thin or insubstantial, like the word tenuous in English. This is ending is accusative plural. In prose, it would be tenues, and then it's agreeing with auras, which is the breezes. So she left me weeping and wanting to say many things, and she withdrew into the thin breezes. Next line, 792, we begin with ter, which means 3 times, and then conatus, which is short for conatus sum, perfect tense of a deponent verb. It means I tried. And then ibi, meaning there, so 3 times I tried there. 2, circum dare, these two words kind of go together to form one verb. It means to sort of literally give around, so to throw something around something. And the object is brachia, to throw my arms. And then the verb takes dative, and the dative is kollo, which is a neck. So 3 times I tried there to throw my arms around her neck. So Aeneas tries to hug Creusa's sort of ghost. And then ter is repeated in the next line 3 times. And then the subject is imago, the image, the form, that is Creusa's ghostly form. And then you've got a PPP, perfect passive participle, comprensa, having been grasped. And then the adverb frustra, in vain. So 3 times the form, grasped in vain, effugit, escaped, my manus, my hands, accusative plural. So 3 times, I'll just go through those 2 lines actually from the first ter. So 3 times I tried there to throw my arms around her neck. 3 times the form, grasped in vain, escaped my hands. And then in the next line, par is a word that introduces a simile because it means just like or similar to, and it's followed by the dative. So similar to levibus ventis. Levibus means light, as in the word levity or levitate in English, and then ventis are winds. So just like light winds. And quae similima, superlative adjective, very similar to, and again we have a dative, a volucri somno. Volucri means winged or flying, and somno is a dream. So, in other words, Creusa's ghost flies away just like light winds and very similar to a winged dream. Now, of course, dreams don't literally fly away, but the point is that dreams, you can't really hold on to them. They just kind of vanish when you wake up. And that's similar to the way that Creusa just kind of melts into thin air. Okay, next line, 795, seek means thus. And then daemum means at last, just like tandem. And then we have an ablative absolute. So nocte is the ablative noun, meaning the night, and consumpta is the ablative PPP, meaning having been spent or consumed. So with the night having been spent, and then the main verb is reviso, I come back to, or I revisit, and then the object is socios, my companions, accusative plural. So just to go through that line again, thus at last, with the night spent, I come back to my companions. Okay, next line is line 796. Atque hic. Atque means and. Hic means here, in this instance, and here. And then admirans is a present participle. It means wondering or astonished. And it's nominative, so referring to a singular subject, which is going to be Aeneas. We know it's Aeneas because the verb is first person singular. I find, invenio. Okay, so and here, astonished, admirans, I find, invenio, that, now we're going into an indirect statement, which means accusative and infinitive. I find that something is the case. The accusative is numerum, and the infinitive is ad fluxisse. So I find that an ingentem numerum, a huge number, of, and now we have genitive plural, novorum comitum, of new comrades, ad fluxisse, has flowed in. So that's a perfect infinitive. In other words, Aeneas gets back to the place where he's left all the other Trojans, and he's found that there's loads more of them, right? When he left them to look for Creusa, there was just, his dad, Anchises, his son Ascanius, and a few friends. But now there's lots of these Trojan refugees who've all gathered together, ready to flee the city. Okay, and then he tells us a bit about this group. They are matresque, virosque. They are both mothers and men. And he then describes them more as a pubem, a people, a people, collectam, PPP, perfect passive participle, having been gathered. And then exilio is dative, meaning for exile. So a people gathered for exile. And he then describes them again as a miserabile vulgus, a pitiable crowd. Vulgus is where we get the word vulgar from. Because if something is vulgar, it's something which kind of belongs to the crowd, the common people. That's sort of the origin of the word. So I'll just go back to atque for a moment. So, and here, astonished, I find that a huge number of new comrades has flowed in, both mothers and men, a people gathered for exile, a pitiable crowd. New sentence then, undique, from all sides, convenere, they have assembled. This is the poetic ere ending that is short for convenerunt. So it's just third person plural perfect tense. From all sides they have assembled. And then you've got a PPP, parati, having been prepared. Or you might say ready. And then you've got two ablatives, animis with their minds, and then opibusque, que meaning and then opibus are resources. So they are prepared with their minds and resources. In other words, they are mentally ready, they feel ready to go, and they've also got all their stuff, right? They're packed up to leave. That's the opibus part. Okay, so they're prepared, and then you've got a slightly odd bit of grammar here going to the next line, because then you've got an infinitive, deducere, to lead away. But the thing is, it's not that the people are leading, it's Aeneas. So we have to sort of imagine like me here. So they're prepared for me to lead them away, deducere, by sea. So pelago is ablative singular. It means by sea, because they're going to sail away from Troy. And remember, Pelagos is one of these words for the sea, just like mare or aiquor or whatever. So prepared with their minds and resources for me to lead them away by sea in plus accusative, meaning into quascumque terras. Quascumque means whatever, terras means lands. So into whatever lands, and then you've got velim, which is subjunctive. I might want. Not I do want, because that would be wallow, but I might want. So whatever lands I might want. In other words, they're ready for Aeneas to take them wherever it is that he might want to go. They're not bothered, they just want to get out of here. Okay, so I'll go back through that from undique. So from all sides they have assembled, prepared with their minds and resources for me to lead them away by sea into whatever lands I might want. Okay, then iamque means and now. And then yugis. Yugis are ridges of a mountain. And they can also be crests, actually, of, in fact, we won't go down that rabbit hole, but let's just stick with yugis as the ridges on the mountain. So you have to imagine in before this word because it's in plus ablative. So yugis means on the ridges. And then you've got a genitive phrase, sumai idai. Summa meaning highest, or loftiest, we might say, if we're feeling poetic. And then idai is Mount Ida. This is a mountain near Troy. So, and now, on the ridges of loftiest Ida, the Lucifer, literally the light bringer, this is the morning star. Although some of you may know Lucifer from other contexts, obviously, but in this Roman context, it means the morning star. And the verb is surgebat. You can see from the BA that it's imperfect tense. So I would say was rising. And then que and ducebat was leading or bringing. And then the object is the day, dm, accusative singular. So just to go back to iamque, and now on the ridges of loftiest Ida, the morning star was rising and was bringing the day. Okay, then you get que, meaning and then a new subject, Danai, the Danaans, or Greeks. Main verb tenebant, were holding. Again, BA tells you imperfect tense. The Danaans were holding. The object is limina, the thresholds. And agreeing with that, you have a PPP, obsessa, perfect passive participle, having been besieged or blockaded. And then you've got portarum, genitive plural, of the gates. Okay, so and the Danaans were holding the blockaded thresholds of the gates. So the Greeks have completely taken over the city, basically. Then nek, meaning nor was ulla space, ulla meaning any, and space meaning hope, nor was any hope of help. So opis is genitive case, of help or of aid. And then dabatur is imperfect passive. Imperfect because of the BA, passive because of tur, which is a passive ending. So nor was any hope of aid being given. And then last sentence, kessi, perfect tense, first person singular, I yielded. In other words, I gave up, right? Aeneas is giving up on Troy. He says, right, that's it. It's all over. We're leaving. So I yielded and et. And then we've got one final ablative absolute in book 2. Genitore is the ablative noun. That's father. And then sublato is the ablative PPP, having been lifted up. So with my father having been lifted up, and then main verb petiwi, I sought or headed for, and then the object of that is montis, which in prose would be montes because it's accusative singular, and that means the mountains. Okay, one final time from iamque, and now on the ridges of loftiest Ida, the morning star was rising and was bringing the day, and the Danaans were holding the blockaded thresholds of the gates, nor was any hope of aid being given. I yielded, and with my father lifted up, sought the mountains.